Trevor Noah and Jon Stewart came on to Trevor Noah's podcast, What Now? Not the kids' TV show. What, comma, now question mark, is this show? If you don't know much about either of these two, Jon Stewart is the former presenter of The Daily Show. It is now the Monday presenter of The Daily Show. He's in semi-retirement, living his best life. Trevor Noah was the guy that took over from Jon Stewart. And his story about how he became the host of the show after Jon was just hilarious. So have a read, have a watch of the whole thing if you'd like. But they talk about in here how, and I really like Trevor Noah for this as well, because he is someone who has a very different perspective, an outside perspective of American politics, because he grew up in South Africa and really only came to the States when he got the job. And he has experience of apartheid. He has a Dutch father, an South African mother. He speaks 2 languages. Like there's lots of things. He has an experience of the world that's and a view of the world and an understanding of things that's very interesting. And I always loved his when he did between the scenes on The Daily Show, and you just have a back and forth with the audience, and you get some fascinating insights to how he sees things. And he is that kind of guy who can give credit with credit's due, but also criticize at the same time. And the conversation that they have here in sort of 2 parts is they're talking about how when they would criticize their political side, that that liberals would be really bad and just sort of saying, well, now you're playing for the other side of the team, so you drop. Like their whole cancel culture thing that was very that was quite rife for quite some time. So I'll quickly play. They also talk about sports analogies, which I quite liked.
I'm sure Pat would love the fact that sports analogies.
They did a really good sports analogy. I don't know if it's part of this or not, but essentially Trevor was saying that he gets really annoyed when like when you're on a soccer team and someone fucks up and the whole team or someone on the team criticizes their own team and was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, were you trying to hit our own goal? It's like, you guys are all playing in the same team. Like yeah, mistakes happen. Let's move on. It's that kind of vibe, which I quite like. It was a really good analogy. We'll have a listen. Oh, not that fast.
Oh, Jesus.
Not that. I'm gonna go 1.25 just because. So I wonder if we'll get away with it and not be on the algorithm.
I can't hear that.
What have I done?
Maybe you just have to reshare and click the little button, maybe.
No. Oh.
Did I hear?
Hang on. Oh, shoot. Okay, normal here. She talks really fast. I was trying to get backwards.
Liberals do that, and if the person's receptive, I go, yeah, we made a mistake. Let's move on.
Yes.
I don't think liberals do that, to be honest with you. I think there's like there's a real like, well, not only are you out, you're on the other team,
right?
Which is even crazier to me. Imagine playing a game, John. Imagine playing a sport. Every time your wide receiver drops a catch, every time your point guard passes the ball out of bounds, not only do you bench them to the other team. That is an unsustainable way of growing a coalition.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It doesn't encourage people.
The only thing that because,
and again, grace is the key
groups
thing.
Have that litmus test. Like if I'm looking at, so I'm thinking about the right now, and before I grant them the redemption arc, I think about the vindictiveness of the Trump era. That there's very little of it. You know, there are really no deadly sins in the Trump era in terms of that. When you talk about faith, and he can be convicted of this, or he can, and evidence of unfaithfulness. And
they talked about earlier about religion and how that kind of thing of you follow God regard, like you kind of follow the general gist of things, even if you don't agree with every part of it. You know, there's parts of Christianity that there's very, they were talking about the whole, how Christianity in itself is very fractured, and there's lots of different denominations, and like some people believe this and some people believe that. Some people say that's not how you interpret that and that sort of thing. But generally they're all following the same God. Not saying Trump is God, but like it's the idea that he's talking about how Trump can, like he's imperfect, and that makes him kind of like Jesus, right? Is it Jesus?
Yeah. Was supposed to be someone who's basically relatable to the people by being fallible rather than infallible.
Yeah.
Sexual harassment, all these different things. And he's an imperfect vessel.
Yes.
But the one cardinal sin is fealty, is if you're not loyal enough.
You're not wrong.
So they do have
you're not. That's where religion comes back in.
Right.
Thou shalt have no other God but me.
That's right.
That is
but that places him beyond the scope of redemption and into the pantheon. Because there was a part of me that thought, oh, it is true. Like I've been involved in some liberal movements. Like we have a rescue farm, so I was involved in animal rights.
I remember when we
met some of those
chasing
folks.
They go on a side tangent and they're talking about how Jon Stewart was part of an animal sanctuary, and then he was running after a bull in New York City, essentially. Then they get back to the topic at hand. But was there anything that you wanted to expand on? I know it's kind of a weird, like, in between a conversation. I could play the whole thing in context, but honestly, it would take us a while. But the general gist of what they're saying is, talking about imperfect leaders and being loyal to someone regardless of their imperfections, that just comes with good and bad. And sometimes the right is very much the same in a lot of ways too, is that as soon as they do something that's even slightly wrong, they'll just cull them. But I think we on the left are also really bad at that. We're seeing that with Chippy, and you and I are very, like, we will blast Chippy for his imperfections. But there is a lot of really confusing things there, because it's like, well, do you blast the leader that they decided to go with? Do you just is it a good sign if the people on the left are not supporting the left party, or the major left party? Like there's a lot of really awkward things about, and it's just politics, I think, in a lot of ways, what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, when it comes to the whole Chippy thing, it's not like we're having a go at him because we're like, oh, fuck you, we don't like you, you're just as bad as the other side. We're like, no, there are inconsistencies in your messaging that are quite important and do need to be made clearer, so that, these people you say you want to potentially get to vote for you actually feel like they can trust you. Because if you're not having that kind of, clearly they're, like he said, they're cohesive within their party. But when we're in an MMP system and we're kind of essentially back into a two-party system, when we really think about it at the end of the day, because we're just making it the right side coalition and the left side coalition, but that's a whole different other conversation. Like, it does seem like, that there is a lot of things he's saying against the other parties of that side of the MMP that aren't good, that do not show that they're actually working well together with them, that doesn't show it, and it just creates this inconsistency. And I think that's absolutely fine to actually call out and be like, hey, I don't think this is great. Maybe it's not me saying you're a horrible fucking person and you might as well be a right winger. Like, no, you're in the center. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't criticize those people. I do think that, unfortunately, especially in the left, we have had histories of bad things where, like, lefties will sometimes get a bit too hardcore and they'll try to be, this puritanical version of politics, which
that's how we got cancel culture, which was kind of like, it was a shift far too much in the other direction, and then we kind of sort of went, okay, that was probably a bit far. We've sort of found a better place to be in, but it's
like an overreaction to, And at the same time, I don't even necessarily think that overreaction isn't exactly wholly bad either. Like there's a lot of minority groups who end up lashing out against, say, other minority groups or just other people in general because, they're it's like they call it like the hedgehogging effect, where basically they start to get really defensive, and that defensiveness can kind of not help them be productive or positive. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there is, like, if you put someone up on a pedestal, they're kind of guaranteed to fall and crash because you're putting them up on a pedestal. We often think when we look at leaders, we look for them to have infallibility, like be fallible, so that we can kind of relate to them. But then we take that and then we internalize it and then still put them up on that pedestal. And that's where I think the disconnect is. And I think that's why, when I learned about even, say, the term rangatira in terms of leadership in Te Ao Māori, it's not like the rangatira sits above everyone. The rangatira is literally tying and able to bring these people together. You have to have a lot of skills, and you also have to be able to sit there and take on criticisms, take on a lot of feedback. And we should be able to do those things without, going, oh no, now I feel like I'm weak and everyone's going to not follow me because if I admit this, it means I'm weak and I won't be able to lead. It's definitely something that I think catches people in a bit of a trap. Oh, are you muted? I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's because I was drinking. I didn't want to be like, glug, glug, glug.
No, I get it. I was about to do the same.
There you go. We're all glug, glug, glug. Someone saying the cancel culture wasn't really that bad. I disagree. I think there was very valid cancel culture. I think, no, there was very valid cancellations. That's not quite right. Against people during the Me Too movement, where it was sort of enough is enough. We're not going to tolerate this anymore, and there is so much misogyny and sexual harassment in just the world in general against women, and enough is enough. We're not going to be silent about it anymore, and we need to start doing something about it. But that kind of and there was so many people in power or celebrities, all these sort of people that were at fault, and they all started to get outed, rightfully so, for criminal action, right? Sexual harassment, sexual assault is criminal action. And it was a shame of these women, which that's victimization in itself. And then they started to come out, and people were getting cancelled, but they were rightly being prosecuted or persecuted. Persecuted, but maybe not prosecuted, unfortunately, for it. And they shouldn't have the success that they have until justice is served. I think that's where it kind of came from, right? You shouldn't be out there flaunting and on the stage and because justice has not been served. Does that make sense? It would be like,
it's about deplatforming someone so that they're not able to have a means of not only spreading potentially a dangerous message, but also just monetizing and making money off of that.
Yeah. Or gaining even more power through money and that sort of thing as well, being able to bail themselves out and that sort of thing,
To be fair,
so justice is never 100% served, right? That's kind of the...
I also feel like the term cancel culture, it's taking a concept that actually does have a lot of very valid and reasonable points and kind of just making this overarching umbrella that often just is a means to which to kind of invalidate or devalue someone's kind of point. Because I feel like you said, the Me Too stuff, that wasn't cancel culture. That was people being held to account and victims finally feeling like there was a space in which they were able to come out and actually, take the burden of that off of them. But there are people who, the right wingers who go, oh, and then the snowflakes got all blah, 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 and the fucking, now I can't even compliment a woman at work, otherwise I'm going to get cancelled. No, fuck off. Fuck
I
off.
think the cancel culture came from that, though. It was, I think we definitely overcorrected after that to like the idea of because we were not going after, but because it was people who were on that pedestal that were getting deplatformed, or we were finally saying this is not okay and you should no longer have the sort of status that you have until justice is served. Like justice should be served because you've predators to everything. But that overcorrection then became, you said something online 10 years ago, or you used the N-word, or you did things in your past that you would now not do and you would condemn because you understand now that you've changed.
You posted a racial slur when you were a teenager and now you should, which is obviously not but at all.
That's not the same.
About.
No. Yeah. I think that's what the issue was, is that cancel culture became that, and that's when right-wingers went, oh, I can't even give a compliment to a woman anymore, because they lumped it all together as like, that's where I sort of think that was the issue with cancel culture.
I feel like part of that, though, was kind of just in retaliation to the fact that people were bringing up very like reasonable, genuine concerns that were not being taken seriously. Like if people find that complaining about a broken leg isn't going to get them help, they might start complaining about smaller and smaller issues to try and test the waters to see if they can maybe get help with that broken leg. Like, I do feel like there is, like, and it also just plays on people's kind of, I think, like, people get afraid when they kind of get told, hey, you shouldn't do this anymore. Like, when, people started saying, hey, Māori, we should probably stop saying the N-word. Like, a lot of Māori, and even still to this day, are like, really? Like, no. They're like, no. I am too afraid to let go of that. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. And I think when, it comes to these things, like seeing, seeing a celebrity that you've spent the last 30 years idolizing, you find out that they're a piece of shit. You start to internalize what that might mean, or even potentially mourn the fact that you might have to stop, watching this person. Like I mean, we grew up in the more YouTube times, so I think we know better than anyone. Sometimes you just got to stop watching them because they're a piece of shit, and that can no longer justify watching those videos, even if they're a part of your literal, like, I've had one of the YouTubers I would listen to creepypastas to go to sleep. He was found out to have been inappropriately messaging minors, and that actually literally disturbed my entire sleep pattern, because it took me ages to find a voice that I could listen to that had the same effect. But you know what?
But
I had to do it.
Morally, it was the right thing to do.
I'm not going to allow them the ad revenue that my sleeping will give them. Like, sometimes you do just have to make uncomfortable changes and live with that discomfort, because in discomfort is where growth happens. Right.
Yep. It turned out the creepypasta guy was actually creepy.
I mean, it was literally in the name, but it still hurt. All right, it still hurt.
The next wee bit, I'll just show this as well, because it kind of follows on from the same thing. After they talk about Jon Stewart chasing a bull in New York and bringing it to a sanctuary, and then driving through the freeway with a giant with a bull in their trailer. It's honestly, it's a great story. Just go watch the whole interview. It's fantastic. But they bring it back to comedy as well. As one of the things they say is it's fragility, and sometimes when you're watching a comic on stage and they're really timid, it puts everyone in like a position of like, you feel timid for him. You're like, oh, I feel uncomfortable. Like, oh, this is cringy and uncomfortable. Yeah, they're liking this to the likes of Biden, and that when we saw some of the interviews and things that he was doing, we all, and it's the same with Chippy. It's the same feeling we get with Chippy sometimes. We go, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. Is this the guy that can win the next election? That is the exact same feeling. And they're talking about this, and I feel like we can all somewhat relate to it in a lot of ways. Now, did I put the sound back on? Yes, I did. Okay, don't come for me.
When they feel that fear, they're very comfortable attacking who they think are the other team.
Yes.
And they think that if you give them any solace, they don't view it as that might be a constructive lens by which to view, like a stand-up comic. What's the worst thing that a stand-up comic can be? Fragile. If the audience is worried for the comic,
that's
you're not going to listen to that. Well, that's what Biden was in that moment. He would come out, and I don't care who you were, like, you were worried.
No, you were.
You felt it viscerally. Mentioning that as a way of maybe saying to people, either A, prove that this is the wrong emotion that I'm feeling, or B, get someone there that has the wherewithal to take on this. I would think would be viewed constructively, but it was viewed utterly destructively. You know, in terms of it bothering me, like, nobody likes to be yelled at a lot, but I think I've been doing it long enough that the thickness of the skin, like, I don't dwell on it in maybe the way I would have when I was younger. But the second part of it is, I remember the war on terror.
Wait, no, hang on.
Like America in that fight over Al Qaeda. Big fan. But I criticized America quite frequently. That doesn't mean I wanted Al Qaeda to win. Or that doesn't mean that I think, it means that I hold my beliefs and the people that I want to carry the flag for that to a very high standard. And that standard, if not met, I think, in the same way that I try to hold myself to a high standard.
Yeah.
And when failing to live up to it, I'm very critical and try and grant that forgiveness. But the point being, if you love something, if you believe in the idea of something, you have to stress test it. It's like anything else, man. What's the toughest part about comedy is it's not the writing, it's the rewriting.
Yeah.
It's the editing.
Yeah.
And why do you do that? You do that because you think you can make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you feel? Yeah. I was watching that and I was like, shit, this is really, really reflective of what we have been feeling and saying, and about how we're feeling about Labour at the moment. Because let's just be 100% honest, Labour have to win in order for there to be in order for Greens and Te Pāti Māori to have any power, the left rely on Labour winning. So even though some of us, myself personally, I wouldn't be voting for Labour. I might, not party vote at least. I'm not party voting Labour. I'm very honest about that. But that said, I still need Labour to win. And they are the majority on our side. So I like this conversation because we get criticised for criticising Chippy. You and I do. Pat and Chewie do. We get criticised for criticising Chippy because, and even myself, I'm still worried that it looks like we aren't cohesive, right? With, like, if we don't support the left-leaning party, then, you know, everyone starts to freak out because, you know, you're a bunch of lefties. You should be supporting the left party. If the left party aren't good enough, then, you know, it's not worth voting. Like, there's all that sort of thing of, like, there's no...
I feel like that so overly conflates how left Labour are, though. It's such an interesting way that people view it.
But, criticising your own team, that kind of thing.
I mean, the coalition that we are essentially associated with.
Lumped towards.
I mean, though, I find that interesting because it's like, well, I'm sure if, you know, what about Winston Peters making comments on Christopher Luxon's actions or David Seymour's? That scene is, like, often is not actually seen that badly. And if anything, it's like, oh, look at them being robust and able to debate each other. I'm sure the right love that because they're like, oh, see, at least they're able to stand in their things and have a back and forth, even if it's a fucking mess. But, I mean... Yeah, I just find it interesting that like Labour, I do think it would be great for New Zealanders to slowly start to learn, like, hey, it doesn't have to be Labour. Te Pāti Māori and the Greens, if voters who didn't vote actually fucking got out there and actually voted, then like I'm sure we can make up the numbers, because there is a lot of people in this country who do not vote or do not participate at all. So I hate to say it is likely still, though, at least this round. Maybe in the next couple of rounds, people will start to realize that we, the people, have a lot more power when we vote. Because right now, we're fucking stuck with this shit.
Yeah. I guess the thing that I kind of want people to take away from it is, yes, criticize it. From this side of things, yes, I think it's fair that we're critical of them. I think we should be critical of all of our politicians, and we should also give credit where credit's due. That's why everyone very unhappy that I was giving Chris Bishop some credit where credit's due. But there was something in that was worth crediting. But as a whole, not happy with his party, not happy with him and some of the things that he's done. But as an individual, and in that individual moment, I can criticize Ed. Well, I can give credit there. But at the same time, I might be overall really happy with some of Labour's MPs, and I really like the likes of Kieran and Duncan Webb and Barbara, and like those are really good politicians. I also really like Chippy, but there are moments that I criticize Chippy and I say, I'm like that fragility, right? Like that doesn't sound good. Where's the cohesiveness in that? And because
whereas it shouldn't be like that. It should be like, cool, you're actually asking questions and challenging someone, not leading them, like blindly following them.
Yeah. The politics is a fun one. I think for us, we sit in our echo chamber and we're all very politically active, and we know what's going on. We see the ins and outs. We see the dog whistles. But the thing is, the major criticism I have of Chippy is that if he criticizes too much the progressive policies that the likes of the Greens have and Te Pāti Māori have, then the progressive policies that they're going to put forward are going to also reflect the general sentiment that they are giving to those policies, to that progressive side of politics. Because if they say airy-fairy Greens or unrealistic Greens and all that sort of stuff, then if they put through a capital gains tax, then the general person, the general public, are going to go, oh, that sounds progressive, scary, and socialist. There'll be a sector of people that will go, ugh, I don't know about that. And then there'll be a sector of people who are maybe a little bit more on board with progressive policies and capital gains tax and more taxing wealth, that sort of thing, who understand it, who will then be on board with it. So, yeah, I think it's just, but in our little space in BHN, we can have discussions.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
we might not always agree with each other, but we can see each other's point of view.
Yeah, there's actually one comment here that they said we need to be careful when we criticize Chippy. It falls into the same basket of Chippy criticizing the Greens. I don't think it should. So I guess maybe potentially hot take. I don't think it should, because you got the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, who are these two minor parties that don't generally have a lot of weight they can throw around in the game. Labour are supposed to be the buffers onto this left side. We should be expecting them to have, we should hold them to higher standards. The same way you would hold someone who leads a team of people to higher responsibilities than the other people who are on their team. If they're going to be the main left party, they should take on the responsibility of bringing that left coalition with them, not weirdly taking jabs at them for honestly what feels like no reason other than to satisfy the national voters they want to steal. Like, I don't know. It seems kind of weak.
Yeah, it is a weird one. I think the best way I can put it is punching up and punching down. We are punching up because they have far more power than what we have. We can criticize the likes. We can criticize the likes of our politicians and things because we have zero power in all of this. Like, we have a little bit of power because we have a conversation and platform, but we don't have nearly as much power as they have to influence. And it's the same with Labour. When they criticise Party Māori and Greens, is they're punching down. And if Labour want to be a slightly more progressive and more left party, they have to bring the voter base in their centre with them. Mm-hmm. I think is where I'm going. Is like they need to bring them with them and bring them towards, because we are generally moving, like centre is moving centre left more and more and more. Progressive policies, more social policies, people-based policies are more popular. Capital gains tax was very popularly voted in the general public and surveys and things like that. So, but they need to get Labour to keep pushing that way and not doing this weird thing. I don't know. It's kind of how I feel about it.